Hey, welcome back to the Jesus Magnet podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and we've got Todd. How you doing, Todd?
Hey, good, thanks, mate.
And we've got a wonderful guest today, Bonnie. How you doing, Bonnie?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Bonnie Thomas. Bonnie is a great friend of ours, lives very close to us, and has a wonderful story that we're pretty excited to hear. And how you doing, Bonnie? Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi, well, as you said, thanks for having me. My name is Bonnie and I'm a Kiwi girl. Grew up in Dunedin, moved up to Queenstown when I was like 11, and I've been here ever since.
Ah, wonderful. Because we actually went to the same school for a number of years. I don't remember seeing you, though.
I don't remember seeing you either.
Yeah.
No, I only know you through my sister, who you're in the same age year.
Shout out Anna.
Yeah, shout out Anna. I'm going to make her listen to this one.
Happy wedding as well for Saturday.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
Anna's wedding, not mine.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Anna.
Yeah, so Bonnie, you've grown up in Queenstown and you always went to church with your parents, is that right? I mean, you were in Dunedin for a little bit, right? But yeah.
Yeah, so grew up in a Christian home, and I guess a lot of people would kind of think, oh, of course you're a Christian because you grew up in a Christian home, but I guess that's where my testimony is a bit different from others. So, I mean, firstly, I'd like to just start out by saying, what we're actually doing here is, actually illegal in some countries of the world to even talk about Jesus. So we are just so lucky to even be able to, have this opportunity to talk about our faith. And this podcast is not going to be used against me in the court of law in future. I'm just putting that statement out there now. Just in case.
Probably a wise thing to do. We need to go through and edit every other podcast episode now with that. Cool.
Thank God.
Awesome. Yeah, so you're saying that you grew up in a family with Christians and went to church, but you said that you weren't always the Christian. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. I guess like everybody, we all have our teenage years where we sort of rebel a bit and we're all, pushing boundaries, and I definitely did that. My oldest brother, Tim, and myself, I'm the youngest in my family of 4. We were the 2 naughty ones, and the 2 in the middle, Juliet and Joseph, they were pretty well behaved, very well behaved actually. And me and my brother, we caused a lot of drama in our family. So so sorry, Mum and Dad, about that. But it made me who I am today. I guess sort of where my testimony really starts is because like even my family and friends that are listening now, you may not even know this story, and you probably don't. I don't really tell a whole lot of people. Because there's a verse in the Bible that says it perfectly. It says, "Don't cast your pearls before swine." So basically what that means is, whatever you hold is cherished. Don't go and cast it out for anyone to just trample on and crush, because that's something that's precious to you. So I've kept this kind of quite close to my heart. So basically I'll take it back to the start. I mean, as you know, I grew up in a Christian home. And I had my first encounter with Jesus. I suppose I sort of always knew God was around and Jesus was around, and going to Sunday school and things like that. But when I was 5, one year we went on a hike. My whole family did this tramp on the Abel Tasman track, which is massive and beautiful. And so the whole family went, and we were all walking this hike. And at one point, like, because I was 5, I was so little, my legs were so little, I couldn't really keep up. So my older brother and my sister and my mum, they all went ahead. And my dad and my dad sort of strayed at the back with me. And it was quite a cool story. I remember it so vividly. We were walking through the forest in the national park, and it was just beautiful. And my mum and sister and brother had gone ahead. So what they started doing is all of a sudden we found a marshmallow on the side of the track on like this clean rock. And we were like, oh, a marshmallow. And I knew we had marshmallows. So I was like, that's our marshmallow, Dad. And he was like, oh, you can have it. So he gave me the marshmallow, and then maybe like a minute later, we came across another marshmallow on the side of the track. And don't think of it like on the dirt, on the ground where we're walking. There's like, there was sort of kind of maybe about waist height, so about head height for a 5-year-old, so waist height for an adult. Just to the right of us was this like just natural ledge where I guess the path had been dug out from the hill. And so this kept going on for a while, these marshmallows. And being 5, getting very excited about marshmallows, because sometimes there would be 2, so Dad and I would share it, and then we'd go back to taking turns on these marshmallows. Anyway, at one point I got so excited that I was like, okay, I need to run ahead. I'm going to get the next marshmallow because the next one's mine. And I ran ahead, and there was this point where the track turned to the right. So as I said, the track was up to our waist on the right side of us, and left was this big, I guess a drop going down. You couldn't really see because there were so many trees and everything like that, and the birds were just amazing. They just sounded beautiful. So there was nothing to the left of us. It just sort of fell down. And I ran along the track, and if you can just imagine in your mind, I ran along, and there was this right-hand turn. And the moment I turned, I don't know if you guys have ever had this feeling before where you're just like, whoa, someone's behind me, or something just changed. So I had that moment. I turned the track, and literally all the birds stopped chirping. Everything went like totally silent. And I was like, oh my gosh, someone's here. And I turned around, and as I turned around, I saw Jesus on the side of the track, and he had his hands out. He was standing, he was quite kind of like transparent, not like seeing like a person. It was almost like not like a ghost either, not like creepy. I wasn't afraid. That's the thing. I was just at peace. I was just like, what? That's Jesus. Oh my gosh. And I could see his scars in his hands, his holes in his hands. And he was wearing like a white sort of robe. And he didn't say anything to me, but he started to turn. And as he turned, he beckoned me with his hand, and he was mouthing to me, follow me. And he fully turned, and he's looking back at me, still beckoning me, saying, follow me, follow me. And at that point, he walked, was standing on the track, and actually took steps off the track. And in my 5-year-old mind, I thought, this is, am I supposed to do an Indiana Jones and walk out onto this invisible ledge? But as I took a first step to follow, not knowing what I was really doing. I was just like, oh, follow. And at that moment, my dad came right around the corner from me. I was a wee bit like, I wasn't afraid, but I was a wee bit spooked, right? I mean, I just saw something. And as my dad came around the corner, all the noises of the wind blowing in the trees and the birds, everything came back. So I was just like, whoa, okay, I don't really care about marshmallows anymore. But I sort of sat on it and thought, what happened? And a few days later, I said to my dad, because I honestly thought, as some of you are probably thinking now, oh, she's crazy, loony bin. So that was my first real reaction, is that I was a bit like, people are going to think I'm crazy. I've never, ever seen anything else in my life. I haven't had anything else. So, and I've had mental health assessments, and I'm not schizophrenic. I don't see things. I don't hear things. So that's, we might get into that story a bit later. But anyway, so that was my first encounter. And a few days later, I asked my dad when we were heading back to the motel after the hike, and I said to him, because it was just me and him in the car, finally had a chance to be alone with him, and I said, Dad, would you believe me if I said that I saw Jesus? And he was like, what? Yeah, of course I believe you. And then we were just a bit silent, and he went, why? Did you see Jesus? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he was like, wow. And that was really about it. We didn't really, my family didn't really talk to me much more about that. I guess they weren't, they just accepted that. And that was when I first saw Jesus.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
At 5 years old on the Abel Tasman.
Yeah. I've wanted to go back ever since to that spot because I can just still see it in my mind.
You've never gone back?
No, not yet. It's on the list, and I did ask Dad, over the years and stuff. I said, look, Dad, this is the track was like a right hand, like a right angle bend. I said, you would have been walking, you would have been able to see him. Like, did you see him at all? He's like, no. And I was like, wow, okay. So he only appeared to me as a little girl. And I've got a verse here. It's John 20:29, because I find people, they often say, I'll believe if I see something, if something moves if I hear God, I'll believe. And the thing is that, you might believe, but you also might not. So anyway, because I did rebel and I went against God several times, and I've recently come back, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But so John 20:29, then Jesus told him, you believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me. So for the people that are wondering if God is real, just ask him to reveal himself to you, and he will. And you'll be blessed for believing without seeing. And I guess that's one of the great things you guys are doing here on the podcast, is that you're sharing the testimonies. And I've had miracles in my life. There was a time when I was in a really horrific car accident, and I was behind the driver's seat. So in New Zealand, we drive on the left side of the road. So the driver's seatbelt goes from the right shoulder down to the left hip. So I was behind the driver's seat. My seatbelt went from the right shoulder to my left hip on that diagonal. And the guy who was driving was he was young. Anyway, he went really fast, tried to overtake a car, but fishtailed out and went swerving to the right into a bank. And as this was all happening, my torso slipped out from underneath the seatbelt because it was like all sideways impact. My whole torso fell out the seatbelt. My head and body went flying to the right of the car, where I just about broke my neck in C2. It moved out a couple of millimeters, and that was me basically stuffed after that. My whole spine had stretched, and I had whiplash injuries because the belt had caught me only around my hip. So my whole spine had stretched while I was smashing into the side of the car. At the same time, the new stereo that had been installed was flying out the back window, all in those milliseconds of when I was moving across that area. So I truly believe that angels were there pushing that stereo out the way, because that could have easily just decapitated me entirely, because we were going like 130 k's an hour when we made impact. And people don't really walk out of those crashes. The seats at the front of the car weren't actually even attached to the car anymore after that, which was, they'd been ripped out of the car. So
Far out.
Whoa. So you went from being in the back seat to being in the front seat?
No, I was still in the back seat, but initially they thought I had broken my arm, because my arm instantly swelled up like a golf ball on my elbow. And I sort of climbed out the back window and collapsed in some lady's arms on the side of the road. I thought I was going to die. I couldn't move my neck. Anyway, so after that, having a massive injury to my head, I was kind of like, I knew I was still me, and I knew everything around me, but I was like, I knew I was just a little bit, things were just a little bit slow, right? So like I was always like a couple of seconds behind on the jokes, and I knew I was now different, but I didn't understand really why. Like I really, experienced brain damage, really, I guess, concussion, all that. I had to learn to rebalance and all these things from the crash, and that just devastated me. And because I left God and did a whole lot of crazy stuff as a teenager, and basically this crash happened. Like I wasn't in the best of places. I was smoking weed. I was hanging out with guys, not just hanging out, if you know what I mean. And so I think this was a real massive wake up call for me. But one day a guy was like, "Hey, there's a healing thing happening in Gore. Why don't you come along?" And I was like, "Okay, I will." what else have I got to lose? Because I really want to be healed so I can, move my head without feeling dizzy and just be able to do normal life stuff again. So I went along, and the guy started off by praying, and he's like, okay, look, we're going to start from top to toe. So we're going to start from the head and work our way down to the feet. So anyone who's got head injuries, neck injuries, anything to do with the brain or the head, eyes, ears, anything, come forward. So I went forward, and he literally just prayed a simple prayer. He just said, in Jesus' name, be healed. And instantly, it was like this fog or this lace was instantly removed. I could instantly see clearly again. I instantly got my sense of humour back. I instantly was able to, be in the moment with everyone when they said jokes and things like that. And so that was just one other healing I've had in my life. I've got more healings that I can tell you guys about if you want. But yeah, I just coming from a place where I suppose like I didn't understand myself anymore, being in that cloud and coming out of that was just really amazing, and to be able to have full restoration.
So Bonnie, each time you had one of these healings or experiences with God, did you find that edified your faith in like going, okay, I can really trust you? Or did you still, a lot of people have these mad experiences where people are healed or resurrected or demonically delivered, and then they quite quickly can almost, it's not that they forget about those things, but they don't hold the grip that miracle kind of should have had on their life. Very quickly either falling back or slowly falling back, or was it something that was able to solidify your faith, to not fall back but almost fall forwards?
I guess it definitely built my faith, although I did fall back again.
I totally mean like spiritually, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it definitely built my faith. I've got this sort of folder in my mind, I suppose, of all the things that God has done for me, and I can recall on them whenever I want to share to whoever I want. Because, when I talk about my faith to people, I really pick and choose what I share. No one ever hears the Jesus story of when I saw Jesus, because I just, I really guard that one.
That one's quite powerful. I'd be sharing that more often if I were you, personally.
Well, hopefully with this platform I will, because God's really been working in me lately, and
kind of had a similar experience with my dad's car accident. I saw a doctor, and I was young. I was 7, close age, and you're right. I really didn't share that story very often, and the amount of people that I've recently been able to share that with through the podcast and other things, it is a powerful, powerful moment, and people go, oh, wow, like God had to be there, had to be in there. And it solidifies not only your faith, but the person you're talking to as well. So it's very, very powerful. Highly encourage you to share that. Even though it's one that's you hold close to your heart, that just shows how strong it is,
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And the scripture you used, 20:29, further back, it's when Jesus actually came back to the disciples and Thomas saw him, and Jesus was like, here are my wounds. And like you seeing Jesus' wounds, been like, yeah, he is real. This is the same Jesus from 2,000 whatever years ago. This is the same Jesus that I was following then. It's here in front of me, showing me exactly the same thing he showed the other disciples.
One thing I find amazing, how like thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people see Jesus every day, through this similar experience. The Thomas experience is kind of what I like to call it, because it was Thomas that saw his hands and was like, oh yeah, that is God. Like that's kind of how he recognized Jesus, was sticking his finger in his hands.
Yuck.
And I'm like, man, you've known this guy for a long time. Why is it that holds it? But it's interesting because all these people see Jesus all over the world, and they all recognize him. There's an innate recognition to the Son, that not that we don't know what he looks like, but when we see him, we know it's him.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And even as a 5-year-old, I mean, you see all these photos and pictures of Jesus. He's this white man with long hair and white robe and sandals. He probably looked very, very different to that.
Yeah, because no one's actually like seen him to be able to grasp a picture of what he looks like. So from reading the
There
Bible,
is that cloth.
There is that cloth.
The cloth that was on him, and it's got an imprint of his face, but it might be a hoax.
Who knows? Like the Weet-Bix that people find and stuff. But yeah, like to create, for your brain to create an image so realistic, like a hologram, you're trying to think of the word, I guess, like Star Wars with a hologram. To create this hologram looking figure
that stops all the birds, that stops all the sound,
like God,
almost stops the world around you to meet you.
Powerful God that we believe in, to be able to bring that up. Yeah, that's cool. But
it's a cool story.
Your healing testimony is very cool, because those people that you're hanging out with would have seen how you were with, like you said, being a bit slower to pick up on things, and from that to be having this healing that just happened with such a simple prayer. How did your friends, like when they saw you come back, what were their thoughts?
Well, at that time I was kind of hanging out with Christians anyway, and they probably, I don't even know really what they saw, because obviously when you've got a brain injury or a concussion, when you know your mind isn't working well, you don't really go and tell people. You sort of like, especially when it's 10 seconds later and you're laughing at the joke that everyone's already laughed at, and then you get it. Like, I really hid that. I don't know how well I'd hid it, but I definitely didn't, I guess maybe I didn't, but they, probably had a couple of laughs with me and just try and laugh at myself. But I was actually really, really embarrassed having that injury. So I didn't really go around talking about it. Like, I'm a singer, and I couldn't, my brain was getting overloaded from standing and singing. I would start swaying like I was on the ocean or something like that, like, because my brain was getting overloaded with the noise. Me also singing, but me also trying to have to think about balancing, which you don't realize you have to think about balancing. Like, it's just something that naturally happens, that your brain is just doing, because we absorb like millions of information every second. So yeah, the brain was definitely slow, and I just didn't really tell a whole lot of people about it. But now there's someone in my life that I am trying to encourage, because they also have a brain injury, and they are, I've spoken about it again. That's sort of why I guess I've brought it up lately, because it's like, well, there's a part of me and a story that I've got, and I know Jesus is a God of miracles, and he can heal, and not even just mental wounds in your mind, but like, the wounds in our hearts as well, past relationships, addictions, things like that, because I've got an addiction story as well. I don't know if we dive into there today, but yeah. So does that answer?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I can understand having that. You don't want to be sharing it with people because,
hi, I'm slow.
Yeah, you don't want their pity, because you already feel bad enough for yourself. But yeah,
it's a funny one, isn't it? The brain injury one, because we get, or mental health as well, that too. Because you get somebody who goes in a car accident and breaks their leg, and they get a cast, and it's on the outside of their body, and they get crutches, and people can be really sympathetic to that. And then somebody is in the same car accident, yet it's a brain injury, and they might look physically well, yet they're struggling to function their body, and that almost gets less sympathy, and it's easier, like you said, like you don't want people to laugh at you or anything like that. And it breaks my heart that it's the brain is treated differently than any other injury. And yeah, it's one thing that I'm personally really sensitive to, because my dad had a brain injury in his car accident, and yeah, can fully relate to living with someone who had a brain injury, And yeah, it's one of those things where I remember my dad telling me, because he lost his eye in his accident, and he also had really bad brain damage. And he had this pastor or it was a pastor or a friend or somebody came up to him and was like, Mark, I'm praying that your eye is going to grow back. And Dad's like, I don't care about my eye. It's I have to sleep 18 hours a day. I need my brain better.
Yeah.
Pray for my brain. I don't care about my eye. I still got my other one. Like, that was the least of his worries. Like, the outside appearance of him was all to do with the brain. So, like, it's definitely one that's an incredible, well, I think personally, because it's so complex, your brain, that the fact that you were healed in a second shows a greater power than God almost healing a broken leg. Not that one's greater or the other, but one's way more complex in the way that it functions than the other. So that just shows, like, it's really glory to God, you know, like, that's such an awesome testimony. And I love how you're able to immediately see the change. Like you said, your sense of humor came back. It's almost like God threw some joy back into your life, you know, in that one healing. Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I also had, you know, I almost broke my neck in the X-rays. It was a close call. So I was in they call it a Philadelphia collar, where it's like a neck brace essentially, but it takes pretty much all the weight of your head. So I was in that for 3 months as well. So I had like, what do you call them, like abrasions on my skin and on my collarbone, because this massive collar rested all on my shoulders.
Wow.
So yeah, it was 3 months before I could even take that off, and then my head just felt like this lollipop, sort of like bobbling around. So yeah, there was some physical injury there as well, and I guess you know, it's why, like, I couldn't really walk around to look at someone. I couldn't just even look with my eyes. I had to, because you don't realise that when you move your eye to the left or right, your head does follow even just a tiny bit. I couldn't do that. Everything had to come from my waist, turning my whole waist, and so yeah, I pretty much sat everything out for a while. But you know, that kind of leads to a bit more of a story. So when I had that head and neck healing, I'd just come back from America, and like, I'm a pretty confident girl. I'm pretty self-sufficient. I'm very strong, but I think I was almost like a little bit too strong, and sometimes I find it hard to slow down. So I had been overseas. I'd just come back. I wasn't in a best place. Like I said, you know, I was really, really heartbroken. I was drinking. I was smoking weed, maybe even cigarettes at the time. Can't remember. Anyway.
Do you mind me asking how you got into that sort of lifestyle? Was it the people that you hung out with, or was it just a way to get away from things?
I was hanging out with Christians, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so they weren't smoking weed. That was something I did with, I guess, my stoner friends. That I sort of had these two different type of friends, these two different lives almost. But I'll come back to that in a minute. So I wasn't doing well. I had the car accident, and I really feel like God uses many things. And I really believe he used that time to literally stop me, because I was stopped in my tracks. I couldn't do anything. From the day of the car accident, we had 6 more months, and then my mum passed away. And I was so independent. I would run around and do my own thing. And, you know, I was like 20. So, you know, I mean, when you're 20, you're pretty much leaving school. You're finding your own adulthood. I guess you do sort of leave your parents a bit behind, you know. You don't maybe not have the closest relationships when you're 20, but then you come back to that. So, yeah, I really believe that God used that time to stop me. He didn't kill me. He made sure I didn't die, but stopped me enough that I had to go home, because otherwise I wouldn't have. I stayed in my flat for a while, so injured, and I just couldn't really look after myself. So eventually crawled back to mum and dad's, and got to spend the last 6 months with my mum. the last 3 months with her, and finally became like friends with her. And like 2 weeks before she passed away, I took her out for lunch for the first time. Like I took mum out for lunch for the first time ever, you know. So like I paid for everything, and I drove, and I did everything and treated her, and it was just really lovely. And I really needed that to. God knew I needed that to make sure that I would be okay today. If I hadn't had that car accident, if I hadn't had gone home, I don't even know if I'd be here. I probably would have taken my life by now, to be honest, because like I said, I was a horrible child. Like I was fun and bubbly and energetic, but you know, it wasn't easy for my parents to deal with. Like I got sent away to boarding school and things like that, and yeah, so I really needed that time with my mum, and I think God knew that. And I guess that sort of leads to the next thing, which is sort of starting to answer how I got into drugs and drinking. I remember my first sip of alcohol was at a Christmas when I was like maybe 8 or something. I had like a sip of beer, and then I had my uncle's sip of beer, and then my brother's sip of beer. And after like a few sips of beer when you're 8, you know, you're feeling pretty dang good. And so I was thinking that was sort of why I was like, oh, this is why, no wonder, like this feels great. So I didn't really think very much about that until this year. But yeah, when my mum died, just going back to when my mum died, she had a brain aneurysm, and she literally just dropped dead. Like there was no warning, there was nothing like that. But it was almost like, well, I guess when she passed away, you know, that definitely sent me into a depression, and I started drinking more. I can't remember if I was smoking weed or not. Probably, maybe not. Can't remember. But anyway,
this was when you were 20?
20, yeah. So my mum passed away 3 weeks before my 21st birthday. So it was only supposed to be me and my mum in New Zealand, in Queenstown. Everybody else was supposed to be gone. So I remember on my birthday, my 21st birthday, looking at the family a bit upset and angry, and mostly just sad, because I was like, just looked at everyone. I was grateful for their presence, but I just said to them, I was like, oh, I just wish none of you guys were here and that mum was, because that's what sort of was supposed to be, you know. I was like, I don't like this trade. You know, because I felt sorry for myself that, oh, it's just me and my mum for my 21st and no one's coming and no one cares, whatever. I mean, everyone was just busy. So, yeah, to finally have the whole family and no mum, I was like, man, this is not a good trade. I wouldn't have traded this for anything. But it
would have been a huge shock to the family. Brain aneurysm, to take someone that quickly. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to pass away from cancer and they have a year or so to sort of brace themselves, but to be taken so quickly at such a young age is just, I don't even know how to relate, really.
Yeah, and I still think about that, you know. I'm like, there's pros and cons of when people go either way. At least we didn't see her suffer, but we also didn't get the chance to say goodbyes as well. So that was it was really hard. So yeah, Mum passed away, and my dad called me that day, and he was like, you know, he's like, Bonnie, you need to come to the hospital. Something's wrong with Mum. I was like, oh, okay. Well, my friend was with me, and I was like, oh, we'll just pop down to the hospital. And we get there, and the doctor tells us that she's passed away. And, you know, like a lot of Christians, you know, because we do, we see God work. We know people have been raised from the dead. That was my dad's first go-to. He was like, Bonnie, we need to pray. We need to pray that Mum comes back to life. But I felt in that instant that in my spirit, it wasn't me, because obviously I want my mum here, right? But in my spirit, I just felt God just tell me that I just felt this presence, and it was just like, that's not your story. That's what I found, what I sort of heard within my spirit, and being guided to hear. So I was like, okay, that's not our story. And I was like, well, we want to respect my father and pray anyway. So we prayed, and then we were led after that. The doctors were like, okay, well, we need to, do some things in here, so we're going to lead you down to another room. My brother had just arrived at that point. And they led us into, of all places, the maternity waiting room. So I was like, why are we here? There's like pictures of babies everywhere, and I'm like, oh, life and death. And I just, in my heart, I was just like, God, like, why? Like, what is going on? Why did you do this? And again, I had that sense and that feeling, and it was just like someone putting their hands out and just doing that like calming motion. It was just like this, in my head, it just was like, everything's okay. This is a part of the plan. This is part of the plan. It's okay. I was just like, whoa, I don't understand why. I don't understand your plan, but I can accept that this is part of the plan. And if I hadn't had a chance to have that car accident, which almost killed me, and almost left me brain damaged, if I hadn't had that experience and that chance to go home, my mum and I's relationship would have been terrible. I would have been left in such a state of depression. And, God's timing is wonderful. And still wish she was here, obviously. But, yeah, it was just amazing to have that peace in that moment. And I guess that's something that, as a believer, that's what you get. You get, when you believe, you get what's called the Holy Spirit, and that Spirit, it guides you. It's like it guides you, and it gives you love, it gives you joy, it gives you peace, it gives you patience, it gives you the ability to long suffer. It gives you self-control, and so a real Christian will be operating out of that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, and the ability to long suffer. And so that's really what a Christian should look like, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's so good.
I love how when a tragedy like that happens with Christians, the reaction, and not always, but it's wonderful to hear and see that your reaction is to draw closer to God. Like, God, now I need you more than ever, rather than a reaction to God. And that might have happened at some point. Probably I would have been probably pretty angry with God, and that would be quite understandable. But I love how your first reaction is, to follow your dad and to pray, but also to listen to that still small voice of the Holy Spirit going, this is out of my control, and I don't have anything but to cry out to you. And that's, I love that, the dependency that you had even at 20, like 3 weeks before your 21st. It's just, that's truly, truly inspiring. And I'm sure many people are going through similar things that might be listening to this episode now, and to show, like, now is the time to actually press into God, not to push him away.
Totally. And after that, after my mum, I call it her graduation day, because I'm like, she passed the test of life and she's gone to heaven. So at my funeral, I'm putting it out there, everyone, you're not allowed to cry. Like, I want to have celebration songs, because that's my graduation day. I'm finally out of this hellhole and this shit show.
I like that.
For lack of better words.
Everyone's got to wear robes and hats and throw it in the air.
Yeah, it's so good.
But my perspective did change, because after that I was just like, right, I know where she went. I know where she's gone, and I'm going to make sure that I get there as well.
Yep.
Even in her last week, it was just amazing. Like, she just had all these conversations, and at day 3, my dad and I, everyone's talking to us, right? Telling, oh, your mum said this last week, and your mum said this in our last phone call, and your mum said this about you, Bonnie, and even her pastor called, and he was like, it's so weird. Like, I spoke to her, and I said, how are you, Adele? I haven't checked in with you for a while. How are you going? And she goes, yeah, I'm good. I think I feel as closer to God than ever before. And that was the day before she passed away.
Wow.
And me and Dad were just like, what the heck? We were just looking, like, we were in shock. Like, after, you know, you're emotionally exhausted when someone dies. I don't really remember the first whole month, because you basically just drop asleep because you're just so mentally exhausted. It's pretty wild. But my dad and I were sitting there. We started to look at each other, and we actually said a couple of times, we were like, did she know she was going to die? Like, the most profound conversations she was having with people, with my aunts and uncles and just friends, and having all these most amazing moments with people, that, we were really like, did she know? And then we're like, no, because she'd tell us. Like, she would have said more to us, like, if she knew. But, obviously God was kind of tying up all the loose ends. So it was just amazing.
It's quite a cool thought to have that, like, if you knew that you're passing, that is the time that you would be the closest to God leading up to it. Because, like, leading up to it, I'm sure there might be an inkling, or so, I have no idea, but, like, just to have that closure, knowing that she had reached out to people, had spoken to all these people, and sort of had tied up those loose ends, before.
I like to see the orchestrativeness of God in those last days. Like, you can't find out all that information about someone, and they've been saying that, they're drawing really close to God, and they've feel like he's right there, and that they're super happy, and they're almost on that, I'm ready, like that, but not knowing why. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, more like, if Jesus came back tomorrow, I'm there. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm in the party,
Let's go. Yeah. That is super cool. Wow.
And to have that comfort for yourself as well, to hear that she was as close to God, and, like, know that she has gone to heaven. And for yourself to be able to, like you said, that is a place that you would like to be, like, you need to end up there, that you want to pursue that. Yeah, words are difficult. And go after that, and go after Jesus to reach that end goal.
How do you think it's affected your dad, all this?
It really hit him big time. It was really difficult for him. It was just him and I at the house, and that was the other thing. It was really important that I was there for my dad. But he is doing well now, which is really good. And I think no one can ever replace my mum, but she's also not here anymore, so he's got the freedom to be able to move on, and he's now in another loving relationship, and they both honour my mum and her husband, who passed away as well. So because her husband and my dad were like best friends, and John was a believer as well. So in their new house now, they've got like, when you walk into the door of their kitchen, they've got like a wall, the walls in the hallway, and sort of like, I might have this wrong, but on the left is like my dad's family, and on the right is like her family. So they've got these two walls of their families, because we can't erase them, and we don't want to erase them. So yeah, John and my mum do get honoured within my dad and Jamfrey's new marriage, which is really good. It's good for the grandkids.
Yeah, that's quite special.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That would be the worst if went into a new relationship and they didn't want to talk about the old wife, eh? But yeah, that's really neat that they're able to really honour your mum in that, and yeah, just that's so special to be able to continue that heritage of her. And yeah, I mean, Laura and I were actually talking about this the other day. Like if either of us did pass, would you ever want us to remarry and things like that? And Laura was hilarious. She's like, you got to cry for at least a couple of good years before you can get another wife. And I was like, okay, not moving on very quick. I'm like, hey, you get a new wife, get a new husband straight away. No.
You sound like you're betting on it.
No, just kidding.
Slow down, Joel.
No, it was a weird, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those thoughts that runs through my mind. Not that the moving on part, but yeah, it's a Lord, don't because when you're in a marriage, one of you will die first. You're not both going to die at the same time.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
So that runs through our minds every now and again, and it's a funny discussion to talk about. So Laura's like super healthy, and I'm like, oh, I'm planning to go first now.
Well, it's funny because my mum actually would, she'd sometimes get frustrated with my dad, as everyone does in any good relationship, and she'd be like, oh, for goodness sake, if anything bloody ever happens to me, your dad's got to get married again. He's not going to survive without me. He needs a bloody woman in his life. So we all sort of giggle about it now. We're like, yep, sorry, Dad, if you're listening. Dad, you're a bit hopeless. You're a great guy and you're pretty onto it, but yeah.
Yeah, this can be Joel as well.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do anything without Laura. Yeah. That's awesome, Bonnie. Did you want to share anything else? Or I know that we want to go into the next part, which is the addictions, but we could do another episode for that. Or would you like to?
Yeah, should we do a wee teaser and
let's do a teaser.
Teaser
For round 2. So what's going to happen in the next episode, Bonnie?
Right. Well, stay tuned for the next episode. I'll be speaking about addiction and being set free from those, and how an addiction might creep up on you and slip into your life, how to get out of it, how to cope with that, and also we'll talk about some betrayal. Dun, dun, dun.
I wish we had that sound effect.
Do we not have that sound effect?
Yeah.
We have to get it for next time.
I think we got a scary one. Is it this one?
That one.
Betrayal.
Yeah, there we go. That's good.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, we'll finish there.
That this podcast, I think, is very good to see more for myself. I see that God has given you quite an imagination, or not an imagination, like a visual.
He has given our imagination, though.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean, like a visual representation of him in your life, like how you saw him saw Jesus on the walk, and then when you're in the maternity room, seeing, like, getting that feeling of, chill, like, just relax. I've got it.
Yeah.
Like, I can see that he's given you a very good visual representation, and then also you've given my wife a word, so he's given you a very active spirit to
seriously active.
reach people and to give people words of wisdom or guidance or knowledge. So
Bonnie has one of the biggest hearts for the lost I've ever met. It's quite cool. Yeah.
So yeah.
One thing that comes to mind when you're talking about her early vision with Christ is you got this little person, this child that's essentially meets Christ in the midst of the jungle. And he's going, come follow me. But I imagine will be kind of similar to how we meet Christ even when we pass away, even though we don't like to think of ourselves as children. Like, we're pretty young, if you think about it. You got Christ who's infinitely old, and then you got us who, we might have 80 years sort of thing, which to him would be childlike. Almost. So when he's going, come with me, my children, I can imagine God looks at us as his, like, exactly that, children, not necessarily grown-ups and adults all the time, but going, like, this is why you have that dependency. That's why, the word Abba, Father, in the Bible, Abba, people translate it into Father, but that's actually not the correct translation. It's Dada, as in a baby's first words crying out dependency on their parent. And that's how we ought to have our heart towards Christ, which is right from the beginning. You had that vision with Christ and, you're just a child, and it was very, very similar to that. I think that Abba Father fits you really well in that moment.
Thanks. Well, yeah, there's a verse in the Bible that says that if, God knows our heart, and I guess that's what we'll be like. It'll be the essence of who we are, not who we are now as an adult with our scars and maybe our traumas that make us think and act certain ways, but like right down in the essence of who we are. And we all know who we are right on the inside. If we are doing something with a motive that's going to make us a little bit of money, or just genuinely out of care for people, like we know that, and God sees that, and that's what God knows as well. So it'll be us at an essence.
That's so good.
That's really cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bonnie, for joining us for this episode of The Jesus Magnet. You have a powerful story. Don't hide it so close to your heart that nobody ever hears it. It's incredible, and be blessed whoever's listening to this. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we have a website now, thejesusmagnetpodcast.com. So go find that and find us on your favorite platform. We'll see you next time on The Jesus Magnet.